Hello there, I am the CCG Collector, and this is part 4 of my video guide on how to play the Middle-earth CCG. In the first video, we talked about the different card types and showed how to build a deck. In the second video, we went over the turn phases and played through a sample turn. In the third video, we discussed reorganizing companies, playing items at sites, and managing corruption. And now, in this fourth and hopefully final video, we're going to bring it all together, get our companies home, count up our marshaling points, and hopefully get a win here. So where did we leave off? Well, we had a very productive trip. We had a party of 2 going over to Noon, and they were able to recruit the Rangers of Ithilien for us. We had a party of 3 go down to Isengard, and they were able to collect Glamdring and a beautiful gold ring, which we're going to try to test this turn. Every character is tapped, but that's not a big deal because the first phase of every turn is the Untapped Phase. So let's get to untapping. Now, the Untapped Phase, every character and every item that is tapped becomes untapped. Also, any characters that are wounded and at a haven move from wounded status to tapped status, but fortunately we don't have any wounded characters right now. I don't have any items that would untap, but for an example of one, take a look at this Magic Ring of Stealth in my hand. Playable with a golden ring, etc. If the bearer is already a scout, he may tap the Magic Ring of Stealth to cancel a strike directed against him. So you go into combat, you tap the Magic Ring of Stealth, you cancel the strike. Next turn, it untaps, so you can use it again that turn. Note there's one exception to untapping. Tapped sites do not untap during the untapped phase. They remain in play until you leave them, and then they are discarded. That's all of the untap step. So let's go ahead and get to the organization phase. Now we've got a lot we can probably do in this organization phase. We got a couple of rings that we might be able to play. We've got a pretty strong character. I'd like to play Thranduil right away, honestly, but he has a pretty high mind attribute. And I have a lot of characters out already. So I have Aragorn, which has 9 mind. Arwen follows him, so her mind doesn't count for the purposes of calculating that. Faramir has 5 mind. Annalena is following him, so her mind doesn't count. And then Bergil has 2. So we got 2 plus 5 is 7, plus 9 is 16. Wizards don't have a mind attribute, so they don't ever count against your general influence. But 17 out of 20 means I cannot play this fellow, even though I'd like to, because that would put us up to 26, well over the limit. So, okay, let's go ahead, let's test our ring and see what we can get here. So, there are a number of gold ring items, and each of them can be tested in a certain way. They all are tested in the same way using certain cards, like Test of Lore, Test of Form, Ring Lore, I believe, or some characters have abilities that let you test cards as well, like Gandalf knows a thing or two about rings, and he has the ability, may tap to test a gold ring in his company. So, since we don't have any of the cards that let you test a ring, we're going to go ahead and use his ability to do that. Now, the different untested rings have different values that determine what ring you play when you test them. This particular one, Beautiful Gold Ring, lets you play the 1 ring from your hand if you roll a 12 or higher. Dwarven Ring, 10 through 12 or higher. Magic Ring, 1 through 7, or a Lesser Ring, the default, if you don't meet any of the above criteria. And, as it happens, we do have a Magic Ring of Stealth. So that's a Magic Ring that we would get to play if we rolled a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. And we do have a Lesser Ring, so if we roll anything else, we can still play something. Sort of a consolation prize there. Let's go ahead, let's get things tested. Tap Gandalf to test the ring, and we are looking for a 1 through a 7 for this. And unfortunately, we got an 8. If you look at the card again, there is no indicator for what an 8 does, but Lesser Ring, you can play it on any result. So, we'll go ahead, we'll discard this, and we will replace it now with Lesser Ring. Unfortunately, if you recall from the last game and the game before that, or the turn before that, We do have these two hazard cards that we haven't been able to get rid of. The Moon is Dead, which increases the strength of undead attacks, and Lure of Expedience, a corruption on Arwen. And she has to make a corruption check every time a character in her company gains an item, including a ring special item. That's what Lesser Ring is. So she is feeling that Lure of Expedience. You got Gandalf and Aragorn futzing around with items and rings, and she just wants to get on with it. So she needs to beat this corruption check. And she does. Now recall that a corruption check, you roll 2 dice, you add any modifiers, and then it needs to be higher than the amount of corruption points on the character. Arwen has 1 point from Starglass, the item she started with, and 2 points from her corruption card. So we needed to roll higher than a 3, and we did. If we didn't, if we rolled a 3 or below, depending on the result, we would have either had to discard or eliminate her. But that's where we stand right now. Okay, so this is interesting now that we have this Lesser Ring. What's good about a Lesser Ring? Well, first of all, it has 2 marshalling points instead of the 1 that the beautiful gold ring had. And it gives the bearer +2 to direct influence. So right now, that means that Aragorn has 5 direct influence, 3 + 2. 3 of that is wrapped up in Arwen. 2 of that can be used to help with recruiting factions or having another weaker follower. Like this character up here has a mind of 2. He could follow Aragorn if they meet up. But that doesn't really help me. What I could do, what would be nice actually, is if Arwen had the ring. She already has +7 direct influence against Aragorn II, but he has a mind of 9, so she needs a little bit of help to be able to make him her follower. And the Lesser Ring would do that. That would bring her up to 9 total direct influence against Aragorn. He'd be able to follow her, and then I'd be able to play Thranduil, which would be fantastic. But that's a little risky right now, because while I'm able to transfer the ring to her, you can transfer any item from any character to any other character within that company in the organization phase, and you can do that as many times as you want. But Aragorn has just gotten a new shiny ring, and he is a little reluctant to part with it. Anytime you transfer an item from one character to another, the character who initially owned the item has to make a corruption check to let go of it. Ordinarily, that wouldn't be a problem. Aragorn only has the 1 corruption point. He can't fail the corruption check, but Arwen has her Lure of Expedience corruption on, so she's going to have to roll again to receive the item, because she would be a character in the company gaining the item. And not only that, she would now have 4 corruption points instead of 3, making it a little bit harder to pass that roll. If I had a Sage, I could play this card, Marvel's Told, to get rid of Lure of Expedience. Tap Sage to force the discard of a hazard non-environment permanent event or long event. Sage makes a corruption check modified by -2. So that's an option. Another option is the card itself has a condition for getting rid of it. During the organization phase, you can tap the character to remove the card. Opponent makes a roll. If the result is greater than 5, discard the card. So we can do that. Roll a 6 or higher is not too difficult, but the downside of that is Arwen would have to tap to do that. Even if she doesn't get the corruption off of her, she still remains tapped. And that's not ideal. Then if I wanted to play Marvel's Told, she's a Sage. I mean, she'd have to tap to do that anyway. So either way, a character's going to get tapped. But I think I know a way around this. I'm going to go ahead and play Thranduil. Now, he has a mind of 9. That would put us above the general influence limit of 20. But that is not checked until the end of the organization phase. And the purpose of that is so that if you want to reorganize companies, you want to make someone a follower, not a follower, you're going to have little spikes in your mind as you go through that. As long as everything is back to where it needs to be by the end of the organization phase, you are okay. Now, where can I play him? Ordinarily, a character can be played to a haven or to their home site. His home site is Thranduil's Halls. That's not out there. But I could play him to Lorien. I could maybe play him as a follower of Gandalf, and then I wouldn't need to worry about all this mind, because Gandalf has 10 direct influence. But Isengard is not a valid location for Thranduil. Also note, those location restrictions are the only restrictions in the starter deck rules, which is what I'm showing off today. If you were to play a standard game, now that we have a wizard out, there would be an additional restriction. Any new character has to be played either to the side of your wizard or as a follower of another character, in addition to being played at only a haven or their home site. We're not doing it that way, which lets us play Thranduil all on his own at Lorien. Going to put him down. Lorien, and he is a sage. So, we're going to go ahead and use Marvel's Told. And this can be used to cancel The Moon is Dead or Lure of Expedience. I'm going to do it on Lure of Expedience just to make things a little bit easier here. So let's tap him. We'll play Marvel's Told. Tap a sage to force the discard of a hazard non-environment permanent event. That's what that corruption card is. He does need to make a corruption check modified by -2. Now the -2 is the modification to his roll. He does need to get above a 0, so I do need to get above Snake Eyes. And I did. I rolled a 6. He passes his corruption check, no problem. This card goes away now. And now we can transfer the ring over to Arwen. Only Aragorn needs to make the corruption check. He should pass with 2 or better. He gets a 5. The item successfully transfers. And now Arwen has enough direct influence to make Aragorn a follower of her. So she's going to stop following Aragorn. Aragorn is now going to follow her. And we are under the general influence limit. 0 from him. 3 plus 5 is 8. Plus 9 is, what, 17? Plus 2 is 19. So everything's all resolved by the end of the organization phase. And we are good to go. So let us move on to the site phase. Not the site phase, the movement and hazard phase. We got to get to the sites before we can do anything with them. So, 3 companies means 3 movement and hazard phases. We've got 1 movement hazard phase for this company, 1 for this one, and 1 for that one. As I did last turn, I'm going to start off with these 2 guys. They're not moving anywhere. They're staying at Lorien. And that means that while there is a hazard limit of 2 against them that our opponent can use to play negative cards, they can only play creatures keyed to the destination site because there's no site path. They're not moving through any regions. So they can only play creatures keyed to havens. No creatures are keyed to havens, so we're safe there. And turns out they have nothing to play, so we get out of there. No issue. And this is a mistake I made in my last video, but even if a company is not moving, yes, they don't draw any cards because they're not moving to a site. Otherwise, if you're moving to a location, you normally draw the cards indicated on the site. But you do still reconcile your hand. Both players do at the end of that particular movement and hazard phase for that particular company. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards in my hand. I need to draw 3 more. Forlong, another character. Okay. Nothing to eat or drink, hazard card. And a dodge, a fairly useful resource event. And notice too that this is an advantage of having multiple companies, because the more companies you have, the more movement and hazard phases you go through. The more movement and hazard phases you go through, the more cards you draw, and the more cards you draw, the faster you go through your deck, which lets you get the cards that you're looking for, the key cards that make your deck run. So that's why it is an advantage to have many companies. Alright, that wraps up the movement and hazard phase for the company up there. Next up is Faramir and Annalena's movement and hazard phase. And you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to specify explicitly their sites of destination. Both companies, that's normally done in the organization phase. You put a face down card for each company that's moving, and then in the movement and hazard phases you reveal it. I wouldn't have been able to do that anyway, because they're both going back to Lorien, this company, and I only have 1 Lorien card. Sometimes you'll have multiple havens in your site deck that you can use to show that. That's not the case here, but they are going to Lorien. And as a result of this being their destination site, now we get to the card draw I was talking about. Shadow player would draw 2 cards, and we draw 2 cards as well. Let's see what we get. Twilight, okay. Looks like a hazard card, but it does say as text that Twilight may also be played as a resource and may be played at any point during any player's turn. But it's a hazard otherwise. I assume for the purposes of deck construction they say that. And Return of the King. So this is kind of a cool card. It basically is a free 3 marshalling points if you can get Aragorn to Minas Tirith and Denethor is not in play. You play it, you get 3 marshalling points, you get 3 extra direct influence on Aragorn. So that's nice, but we are probably not going to be able to use that this game. So it is time for our opponent to play hazards on us. We have a company size of 2, and we have a hazard limit of 2. The sight path back to a haven is the same sight path out from the haven in reverse, but it doesn't really matter since you are not required to match the ordering of the icons anyway. So, like, for example, I wouldn't have to play a creature that would be keyed to the wilderness and then to a borderland and then to a free domain. I could do 2 free domains and then a border domain. Doesn't matter. Borderland. But that is the sight path we need to get through. That is what creatures can be keyed to. So, what is our opponent going to play on us? Well, looks like the first card is a Slayer. And he can be keyed to either a border land or a border hold. Either the region or the site. What does he do? Slayer. 2 attacks of 1 strike each, all against the same character. Attacker chooses defending characters. The defender may tap any one character in the company to cancel one of these attacks. He has 11 prowess. So that's a problem. He is obviously going to attack. Oh, and she is. Is she tapped? I feel like she was tapped, but I don't know why. No, she's not. Okay. He is going to attack Annalena because she is the most vulnerable. And if you can knock out some of our marshalling points, not only does that delay our getting to the end of the game, it also limits our options, because it's nice having a... Let's use a sage too. It's nice having a scout and a sage, even if they're not very powerful at combat. And we're going to find out how not powerful at combat she is, I think. Faramir is going to tap outright just to cancel the second attack, as per the game text on this card. And also note that these are 2 attacks, not 2 strikes. And the difference is, there are cards that say cancel strikes, there are cards that say cancel attacks. And if we had a card that canceled an attack, or an ability, like this one right here, the second attack would still go through. Whereas if it was 1 attack of 8 strikes, you cancel the attack, none of the strikes go through. Anyway, Faramir taps to cancel the second strike, and I'm doing that because normally you want to keep your characters untapped if you're thinking about getting to a site and playing some resources. We're just going home. There's nothing we're going to play at Lorien. So it's better for both characters to be alive than for both characters to be untapped. But the second one still is going to go through. That's 11 prowess against 3 prowess. If I don't choose to tap, it goes down to 0. If I do choose to tap her, it remains at 3. What I think I'm going to do is I will play the card I just drew, Dodge. This card says, target character does not tap against 1 strike unless they're wounded by the strike. If wounded by the strike, the body is modified by -1 for the resulting body check. Okay, so we're going to play Dodge. And this lets her have her full prowess of 3 without needing to tap. So she needs to beat an 11, or at least get to 11, so she needs to roll an 8. She rolled a 5. 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 is less than 11. She is wounded. Now she's wounded. Now we need to determine, did she survive the attack despite being wounded? Now we roll a body check. Her body would be 8. Dodge, unfortunately, puts it down to 7. We need to roll I believe a 7 or lower we need to roll a 7 or lower, an 8 or lower for her to survive, because that's the benefit of a higher body. Higher body, it's harder to miss your body check because you need to roll higher and higher numbers. If you have a body of 11, you need to roll only a 12, otherwise they survive every attack. So let's see what her body check is. And it is, unfortunately, 4. She is below her body of 7, which means she is killed. She is eliminated, removed from the game. I can't play another copy of her. My opponent can't play another copy of her. I lose out on the marshalling points I would have gotten if she had survived. And nothing can bring her back. So That's that, I guess. And that's the danger of a Slayer. He lived up to his name, and you'll notice he's a very hard hitter, and that's balanced by him being very limited in where he can attack. But we're going through Borderland, and he attacked a set of Borderland, and that was that. We didn't defeat the attack. We don't get the 2 Marshaling points. Our character dies. It's discarded. And that is that. And worse still, that was only hazard 1 of 2. So what else does our opponent have to throw at us? Well, looks like now they're going to take advantage of The Moon is Dead with its buff to undead attacks. Play a Corpse Candle. They're going to key it to the Wilderness. That is in the site path right there. Either that one or that one. Doesn't matter, as long as you can match the icon. 1 strike of 7 prowess, or because of The Moon is Dead, 2 strikes at 8 prowess. And if it's not cancelled, the attack is not cancelled, every character in the company makes a corruption check before defending characters are selected. I don't think I have a way to cancel that. Let me Magic Ring and Ghost, Steed. Yeah, so I don't have anything I can do to cancel that. So Faramir is going to have to go ahead and make a corruption check. He's going to pass it. He has 1 item with 1 corruption point, so I just need to roll a 2 or higher. Very hard not to do that. And we get a 10. But there are still 2 strikes to deal with. And what happens here? So 1 strike has to be assigned. Now, because I don't have any untapped characters, the opponent chooses where the strikes are assigned. And the first strike is going to go against Faramir. I mean, I'd have to pick that anyway. That's the only character. But that now every single character in the company has been assigned a strike. There are strikes left over. They don't just go away. You don't get to strike someone twice. But what you do get to do, the opponent, the player who played this card, now gets to assign any unassigned strikes as -1 modifiers to prowess wherever he likes. So if there were 4 unassigned strikes left, he could give Faramir -4. You'd have to. If I had 2 characters, he'd give one -2 and the other -2. But right now, 1 strike against Faramir, 1 -1 penalty to prowess. That's also going on to Faramir. So he goes from 5 down to 4 from that extra -1. And because he was tapped when he got attacked, he's going to suffer an additional -1 penalty. So he starts at 5. If you're tapped when you are attacked, you suffer -1. If you're wounded, you suffer -2. If you're untapped but don't tap, you suffer -3. So here's 5, -1 for being tapped, -1 for the extra unassigned strike. So he's got to roll a 3 against an 8. Let's see what happens. I need to get... Alright, finally a little bit of a turn of luck. So 3 plus 9 is 12. He defeats the strike. There's only the 1 strike. All strikes were defeated. Corpse Candle is defeated. I gain the 1 Marshaling point. That goes into my Marshaling point pile. And because I defeated an undead creature, the Moon is Dead, as per its game text, is discarded because I defeated the undead attack. So get that out of there. Enough of that. Okay, and that's all they have to play against us. 2 hazards. Hazard limit was 2. That's it. So we arrive in Lorien and we reconcile our hand. Now this is a tapped site. If it was untapped, it would go back to our site deck. It is tapped, so it gets discarded. And we can't return there until we get through the end of our play deck. That's called exhausting our play deck. We reshuffle the discard pile and it makes a new play deck, and then we put all of our discarded sites back into the site deck. Probably not going to happen anytime soon. So he arrives at Lorien. Move him up here. Move this over there to indicate that. And I do need to reconcile my hand at the end of his movement and hazard phase. I think I need to get it down to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's go ahead and get rid of Magic Ring of Stealth. We already played the Lesser Ring, and I don't have any other untested rings in my hand. This isn't going to do us any good. We'll just go ahead and discard it. That takes us to the end of movement and hazard phase number 2. 1 for that company, 1 for, it's now a company of 1, but 1 for that company. Now we get to our 3rd and final movement and hazard phase for Gandalf's company. We are heading to Lorien as well. Remember, we draw 2 cards, opponent draws 2 cards. Let's see, what do we have? What can help us? Concealment, okay. Tap a scout to cancel 1 attack against the company. Could be useful. And Cave Drake, alright. Good for our opponent's next turn. We can maybe throw that at him, but doesn't help us right now. And once you know it, because we are passing through Borderlands again, our opponent has saved up another Slayer to attack us. 2 attacks, 1 strike each at 11 prowess. You know what? I'm going to... Let's see. That's 2 attacks. I'm going to have to tap Aragorn to cancel out, and he's picking Arwen as his target. Going to have to tap Aragorn to cancel 1 of those attacks, and I'm going to tap Arwen to play the card we just drew, Concealment. I believe she's a scout, yeah. Tap a scout to cancel 1 attack against the company. So this is where attacks versus strikes is significant. If I just tapped her to cancel 1 attack, the other one would still be coming through. So I had to also tap Aragorn to cancel the 2nd attack to negate that attack in total. That creature coming at us. He goes away because the attacks were canceled. They were not defeated. We don't get any marshaling points for it, but we do escape with our skins, and that's nice. And he's got another corpse candle to throw at us. Hazard number 2 of the 3 he can play. Fortunately, it only has 1 strike at 7 prowess because we did get rid of the Moon is Dead. Unfortunately, all our characters are tapped, so he gets to choose where that attack goes. And he is going to pick on Arwen. Arwen is 2 prowess, minus 1 prowess for being tapped. We need to roll something good. Come on. Alright, and we did get a 10 on our roll. 10 plus 1 is 11. 11 handily beats the 7 prowess coming at us. We defeat the creature. We take its marshaling points. We stick it in a pile. We've got those for good now. 3rd hazard. Stirring Bones. Undead. 2 strikes. So, normally the defender gets to pick the defending characters, but all of our characters are tapped. We have no say in the matter. So Stirring Bones is going to target Arwen with 1 of its 2 strikes at 9 prowess, and Aragorn with another of its 2 strikes for 9 prowess. And you see now, this is why tapping Gandalf to test the ring was a little bit risky. Yeah, we got some benefit out of it. Yeah, we got Thranduil out. He's not really helping as much as he could. Maybe we could have gotten around the corruption. But because he's tapped, we didn't have any choice whether he was going to take any of the attacks. He's got this great big sword here. Didn't make a bit of difference. So, we're on our own. Arwen, you've got 1 prowess against 9. Give me something good. Come on. Okay. There it is. 11. 11 plus 1 is 12. The first of the 2 strikes is defeated. Aragorn, you have got 5 prowess. 6 base, minus 1 for being tapped when the strike came through. You've got 5 prowess against 9. Come on. He rolled a 9. 5 plus 9 is 14. 14 beats 9. And we have defeated another creature. 1 marshaling point. That's all the hazards our opponent can throw at us. So we reconcile our hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll get rid of, I don't know, Return of the King. Cool card, but we're not going to get a chance to play it. That's us down to 8 cards. Isengard is tapped, so it gets discarded, but we make it back to Lorien. And that is the end of the movement and hazard phase. Next up, the sight phase. Everyone's except Bergil is tapped, and we don't have anything we want to play at Lorien anyway, so nothing to do. Now we reach the end of turn phase. We may discard a card, then we can discard or draw back to 8. I've got 8. I don't really care. I don't need to do that. Let's take a look at something. I have a good feeling about this. let's see how many marshalling points have accumulated. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 from defeated creatures. 5, 6, 7 with the 3 points from the faction here. And any items? Yep. 8, 9 from the Lesser Ring. 10, 11 from Glamdring. 12, 13, 14. 15, 16, 17. 18, 19, 20. Well, how about that? We have 20 marshalling points, and one of the stipulations for calling the free council, which is how you end the game and determine the winner, is that one character has reached 20 marshalling points. Now, if you're playing with just a starter deck, if you're playing under the starter deck rules, and you also only have a starter deck because that has fewer cards and potentially fewer resources than a full constructed deck might have, you can call it at 18. Otherwise, you call it based on how long you want the game to be. So there are a couple of ways. Either one person hits the marshalling point minimum, in our case it's 20, or one player has exhausted their play deck, and in either cases, and exhausted means you played all the cards and your deck is empty, in either of those cases, the player who has done that may choose to call the free council, it's called, at the end of their turn and check for victory. The game is the calling of the free council is automatically triggered if both players exhaust their play decks. And then those numbers, so that's for the starter game, 20 marshalling points or exhausting your play deck once. If you're playing the standard game, I believe it depends on how long of a game you want to play. If you just want to get through your deck one time, 20 marshalling points, and then it's, let's see, I think it's you exhaust your deck once. If you want to go through your deck twice, it goes up to 25, 3 times 30, something like that. The point is, you have more marshalling points, and I'll discuss that in a later video where I go over the differences in the rules between the starter and the standard rules. For our purposes, for the starter game rule purposes, 20 marshalling points is what it takes. So we call the free council. Our opponent, that is the end of our turn. Our opponent gets one more turn to gather what marshalling points he can, and then we count them up. See who has more, and whoever has more is the winner. And the reason it's called calling the free council is just for thematic purposes. You control a wizard, everyone controls a wizard, and the idea is that you are trying to prove that you are the best wizard, the one who is most able to lead the free peoples in their fight against Sauron. And the free council determines that based on your success as you travel through Middle-earth. So that's why you call the free council. Now for the starter deck rules, marshalling point totals are very simple. How many do you have? Okay, that's your marshalling point total. In the standard rules, it gets a little bit more nuanced. If you have marshalling points from a source and your opponent doesn't, you double the amount. So, like, if I had this faction and my opponent didn't have any factions that he recruited, I would get 6 points instead of 3. You have a restriction that no more than half of your marshalling points can come from any one category of card. So that could be character, item, event, ally, whatever. And I think there's a further modification that if your opponent is getting marshalling points from a unique card, you can reveal that card in your hand and they get a -1 to the marshalling points they get. But for the purposes of our game, we got our 20 marshalling points. We got it in 3 turns, and I guess we win if our opponent has 20 or fewer, and I'm going to say that they do. Now remember that this was kind of a quick win. I mean, maybe some games end in 3 turns. I feel like we did really well here. Because no one lost an item, no one really got corrupted. We did lose one character, unfortunately, rest in peace, but we only lost out on 1 marshalling point as a result of that. And of course, there were a lot of marshalling point resources that were played very quickly because of some favorable conditions, like having a hand that was mostly resources, having pretty good rolls to get those things. Your actual game is probably going to be longer than 3 turns, but who knows? Might be less, might be more. Either way, that is the game. Hopefully I've told you everything you need to know to get started with it, to at least finally crack open that challenge deck that's been sitting on your shelf and see what it's all about. So, I'm the CCG Collector. Please let me know if you have any questions or anything you want me to cover. But until then, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.